motion to open the meeting?
Motion. Second.
All right, do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. And gentlemen, tonight, we have Kurt Raber from Catalyst Architects. And we're going to open up the floor. Just like to keep this, kind of informal. And Kurt, if you'd like to start and give us some ideas. We did speak a couple weeks ago briefly. Gave you an idea of what we determined from a couple of meetings. We've put together 2 schemes. One with the golf clubhouse is where it is today, and one where it is up on the putting green. And we also mentioned a budget of around $3 to $3.5 million. That's what we've come up with. So.
Right, and you mentioned that on the phone, and so I used some of the talking points you and I spoke about briefly to kind of put this memo, kind of discussion points in the sort of as an agenda really for tonight. And anytime people want to jump in or ask a question, that's fine. We can sort of fold in questions and answers along the way. What you're looking at is actually a CAD file over a satellite image, and it's actually topography for most of the town. But zooming in particular at the existing clubhouse here in the center with the tent, practice green, practice range, parking lot. But in particular, we're thinking about these 2 areas more and more, and the red rectangles represent in the center over the clubhouse a 50 by 100 box, or a 5,000 square foot building, just to give everybody a sense of relationship of we also talked about maybe 5,000 is too big for that budget, maybe it should be 3,500. So the clubhouse doesn't have to be as big as the red box. But as we enter into the design and kind of figure out the program, maybe it will get a little bigger than 3,500 feet. It certainly fits there. There is some grade changes, as you can see in the contours. The existing double-wide trailer pro shop and bathroom structure sits on a bit of a hill. And then the tent is lower on a paved pavilion tent area, but there's plenty of room there for the building, circulation, staging of carts, and then, as you know, there's some manholes, and I believe the septic components are in the arrival circle. The second rectangle is a little bit smaller, and that's 50 by 90 or 4,500 square feet. We figure that's about the minimum size for 80 carts. In a new structure, if it were to be there or anywhere, just set it there, just again show relative size to the existing fenced-in gravel golf cart pen, if you will. So then we've been thinking, is it 1 building or is it 2? There's certainly some benefits for that, but for each of those ideas. When I was here last time and initially walking on the golf course property for the first time with Dana, we wondered, is it possible or even preferred to think about the building moving deeper into the golf course, and there might be more views of more of the golf holes, which is certainly advantageous for like a 19th hole bar or a dining room that has a really beautiful view of the golf course. The farther the building moves away from the parking, the more of our budget's going to be spent bringing the parking and the cart paths and the arrival closer to the building. So thinking about that, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense to kind of extend the parking lot into the golf course more, and the utilities, the water, everything else. So I like the idea of having the building here in the center, but it could move back and be behind the existing building, so that the existing structure could stay in place and operate the golf course while the new building is being built. There's plenty of room to use this as maybe a laydown area or a contractor's area, just logistically. How do we build the building right behind the other one? So I think it works. Maybe there's some vista clearing through the trees that provide that view we're looking for from the dining pavilion, the dining area. But great opportunities all in this area without moving the building too far. The other solution, of course, is that the building goes right on top of the old clubhouse. We rent another small rental trailer as an office and temporary pro shop for the time where the club just won't have any temporary toilets. So we're spending a little budget there as well. So there's a balance. But I think as we site the building, for one reason or another, we'll be able to build either temporary conditions or a lack of those into the budget. I know you've met a couple times, and this committee's role is to kind of right-size the building and right-size the budget. And as I understand it, you're going to make a recommendation back to Dave Flynn's board, and they're going to then refer it to the Board of Selectmen. That's right?
Correct.
Certainly, we'll be happy to be a participant in sort of the presentation to the golf committee and then to the Board of Selectmen. And the goals that you adopted, as you mentioned at the league, was, try to right-size the project at $3.5 million. So that kind of, I go deeper into that in the next bullet point, but I think that's possible. And but we'll have to be really careful. We're looking at some, other projects that are no longer 250 or 300 a foot or even 350. We're looking at some housing projects that are 400 a foot. We're looking at a potential addition to a fire station that's more like 800 a foot. So it's going to be hard. I think the clubhouse building could be for $450 a foot. It certainly could be $5 if we wanted to, but we have to be really careful, really pretty frugal in order to stay under that $3.5 million budget. But I think that's a great goal. Then the study phase, I'll be meeting with Tim Garish, our landscape consultant, and we'll be coming up with two schemes, a one-building scheme and a two-building scheme. And then my office will develop some budgets for each of those. And that'll include a potential construction contract budget, construction cost budget, and an overall project cost with soft costs for design and boring and construction materials, testings, and other things that the committee would need to buy along the way before a ribbon cutting. So all in project budget.
So excuse me, Kurt.
Yeah.
So putting it up where the practice putting green is, pushing the limits of that $3.5 million budget, is that what?
Sounds like it.
That's what I'm taking away from?
It might be. One of the things that we were talking about in my part with Todd and I, the further we stretch the building away from the parking lot, the more we've got to bring the parking lot path for drop-off for clubs. If you need more parking, then maybe that is a reason to push it deeper into the golf course property. The other thought we had was displacing the practice green and rebuilding it somewhere else will probably also have to come out of our budget. And what's the cost of that? And that I don't really have a lot of expertise in. We'd have to ask the greenskeeper, what would it take to build a new practice green and where would it go?
You have a ballpark on that, right, Dan?
Yeah, Steve has said that before.
Okay.
I think his idea was if we did move it back, the practice green, he would be looking towards moving it where the current trailer is. And then we're possibly discussing, I mean, this is outside the scope of this project, but making a practice area on the side of that towards the range and making it a full-on practice facility, driving range, and putting green.
But what was his ballpark number on rebuilding a putting green?
50 to 80.
That's what I
Okay.
Yeah.
You
say,
got some irrigation, you got a little over
I'd say
there.
more on the 80 side, if you said 50 to 80.
Yeah, no, I would tend to, 75,000.
And that's done by a professional company, it's not done by Steve and his
Correct.
crew.
Yep.
It would be done by, like, a crew that would come in and be,
Shape it.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
What's nice about that is you have the practice facilities next to one another. The putting green, the driving range, you know, they kind of go hand in hand. And that's a perk of putting it on the current putting green now.
Sure, that would allow you to differentiate yourself from all of the competitors in the region, because nobody has a full-on practice facility.
Right.
David, would that be something that you guys would find advantageous?
Absolutely. Steve and I have talked about that for at least a decade. I mean, but it's been a long road to get here. But even if we didn't do it at this juncture, in your minds, you should be thinking that is the direction that you probably want to be migrating towards.
You mentioned a drop-off area, you know, I know we don't really need to discuss it now, but a drop-off area could actually go around the current clubhouse
Right.
and back around, even though that current clubhouse will be gone. But even the putting green can go where the tent is.
Right.
Yeah, you have plenty of workable space that
Right.
you've seen over with this aerial. There's a lot of space to work with.
And if you could actually turn
That
that,
box is a
the shape of the putting
box
green.
too, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So it's obviously not going to be 5,000,
Have you discussed, I know I came in a little bit late, I was tied up in another meeting. Have you discussed our current footprint, the existence of our current footprint, and how the new conceptual plan should tie with the approximation in size with our current footprint?
Yeah, existing building's just about 2,000 feet. This red rectangle represents a 50 by 100 box, so 5,000 square foot floor plan.
So my question, I guess, do you consider just the trailer as your current footprint?
No, I would include your tent as part of your current footprint, you know, so that's your major dining facility.
So maybe, could you elaborate on that? Because there seems to be some confusion, I think, with multiple levels of authority that are interested in this project that probably don't understand, you know, what is our conceivable current footprint, what does it entail, and then what would a new footprint, what would it include, and how would it match comparatively to your existing footprint?
Your existing building structure has the pro shop, the hallway, the kitchen, bar, your storage room, and basically the bathrooms. That's about it. And then the deck is sort of your gathering space that's attached to your building, but your true gathering space is the tent, which is, you know, over 3,000 square feet. So,
Do you also consider the cot storage, is that part of your current footprint or not?
no, I think you missed that this other rectangle here is slightly smaller, and that's a 4,500 square foot for 50 by 90, and that's about the right area to stack 8 rows of 10 carts each, so 80 carts. So I wanted to show that relative to the current position. So the two areas are relatively the same size and can be stacked. And there's some efficiency in that, but there's also extras that come with that, which I mentioned later in my memo. The bigger, heavier building, introduces a floor level, and it's a separation between assembly and S1 storage use in the building code, so we have fire rated, but we're also over 7,500 feet, so we're into sprinklers. And then if we have staff view going up and down, do we need a lift? I don't think we do. I think we would design the building with egresses out of the building to grade from the upper level, and no stairwells or no elevators in between the two uses. Just to kind of, again, save money on things we really don't need. Because the carts would be in the basement, cart storage, cart maintenance, other things would be down there, the clubhouse activities would be above. But then we intend to kind of refine two schemes with a one building footprint with the stacked program and a two building scheme. We think that the cart barn can be a very agricultural, low-tech building at much lower cost, because we'll have a slab, it could be a pole barn, and it's, you know, we'll have water seasonally for washing carts, but that's about it for plumbing, and then it's gonna have the electrical upgrade for the charging of the carts. Also, nice generous roof, which could be covered with solar. In the one building scheme, you have less foundation and less roof than the two building scheme, but the building gets more complex. So I think there's going to be a balance, pros and cons for each one, which will, hopefully one will fall out a little less expensive to help us stay at that 3.5 budget. And the 3.5 million is, I assume, an all-in number, inclusive of design, permitting, procurement, and construction, and a contingency. So the number that I mentioned in my outline today was just, thinking about it yesterday, I was like, okay, if we take the 3.5, we just take 20% off the top for design fees, civil engineering, testing, and a contingency fund. That reduces the 3.5 to 2.8. And how do you spend 2.8 to build the best building or buildings you can? And we might find that the building gets smaller than we want to stay under that number, and it might be a reason to try to stretch the budget to reach the 4 million.
I think as a consensus, the group agreed somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 square feet for the building. Is that,
Good idea.
Yeah, certainly as sort of enclosed conditioned space, I think that makes sense. You still could have with it a lawn area or a deck area which you could put a seasonal tent on to drive occupancy for those big event days. If we find that the 3,500 square foot building doesn't give you the number of seats that you thought you were going to have. And when we add the bathrooms and the kitchen and the bar storage, the food storage, the pro shop storage, some office space which is desperately needed, all of a sudden 3,500 square feet is going to be tight.
right.
That's our prediction. So we're talking about, this 5,000 square foot building being out here on the practice area. Certainly can happen. And, then maybe it kind of swings out to, still rectangular, but slightly different shape. Maybe it's 60 by 80 or something like that. But it'll fit out there. If pursuing sort of moving the clubhouse further into the golf course is, a desire, we're happy to kind of look at that. I think talking with Tim Garish, getting the flow to and from the clubhouse, making sure there's enough sort of cart path width for carts coming and going at the turn. It's going to be very busy right there in front of the clubhouse all the time. But, it's a good thing.
I think we should go by two paths. We should, his first option is here, where the building is over where the tent is, and then the second option, which we know is going to be more expensive, to put it on where the current practice green and relocating a practice green and irrigation and all that. That's going to eat away. What I'm hearing is that 3.5 million is not a lot of money to do this project if we're going to build a cart barn and move where the practice green is. So we should get two designs, but at some point, unless we get more money, right now the number we've put out is 3.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the breakdown here, it looks like it's 3 million. Call it 3 million to do what his plan is on the last two bullets. And then we got 20% we're taking off the top for design fees, and then the contingency plan. I have a question about drainage. Will we have to add drainage because we're adding more square footage of impervious, like roof deck?
Yeah, anything that comes off the roof can be, collected right at the downspout leaders and taken to a drainage swale, or could be piped into chambers, hopefully we can find a way to get it to some open space where we can create a swale that the roof drainage can flow into, pre-treat, and, you know, pool if it has to, and then infiltrate it slowly.
Would that be part of the 20%?
No, that would be part of the building.
Okay, that's
cost. Yeah, and one thing I didn't mention, but it just came to my mind, is that, you know, you could do these two buildings at a separate time, but it's certainly much more efficient and less costly to build them together as one contract, even if they're two buildings. Because the procurement process takes time, the oversight of construction can be done, and most importantly, the general conditions that you're paying the general contractor is shorter by half than it would be for building the two buildings. And the clubhouse might take 10 months to build, and the cart barn might only take 4. So if they start them together, the cart barn can come online much sooner than everything else, if the electric is ready, and, you know, every source can be ready.
You mentioned a pole building, what is that?
A pole building is sort of like some people call it a Morton building, or, but it's like an industrial bay building, and they can have a strip foundation or a frost wall foundation, but they can also have pier foundations. So like every 8 feet, you drill in a precast concrete pier, and it has a saddle on the top. And then you have like a triple 2x6 or triple 2x8 columns every 6 to 8 feet around the building, and then they support larger trusses and purlins. And in the cart barn, you won't have any drywall finish, no paint. It's steel camel skin.
Yep, so it's a steel building.
Just
With
a
a
steel
different
building. It should have a slab.
Sure.
And we'll have a little area for wash down. We'll have, the nice thing about those wooden pole buildings is that they come with a wooden truss rather than a big cathedral roof. We want that wooden truss, inexpensive roof, because that's where our chargers are gonna rest. So we want a low roof, low pitch, or it can be low slope, but it can still be shingled. And it can look just like a low one-story barn. And we might have 3 to 4 overhead doors on one end and the same at the other end, so that carts every day can be driven in the same order that they're used in, plugged into their chargers. And
Some of the new chargers are built into the golf carts now. I operate a facility where we have a bunch of electric carts, and they literally plug into 110, and there's not a charger hanging in the ceiling anymore. So I think depending on which direction they go with carts, they would want to know that.
You've been talking with a vendor about a certain type of fleet, so.
Yeah, I haven't had any feedback as of yet, thus far.
Yeah. But, you know, the ceiling in these places only need to be about 8 feet. Sure. Yeah. And it can be in the basement of the clubhouse. We've done that a couple times.
Would it be 2 different contractors to build those 2 different buildings?
It could be. Some of the general contractors that were bid on a $3 million project would probably hire a sub that only does that.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And they'll do the foundation, and then the sub will arrive, and the building will go up, and it'll be weather tight, and then the same electrician will do both buildings.
Okay.
Do you have any ballpark idea, I know this is a very early stage, but how much it would cost, how much more it would cost to put the clubhouse kind of where we want it as opposed to where the tent is?
No, I guess I don't have that answer.
I guess I was kind of looking to see how much extra it would cost, like in general, like not.
I guess it kind of depends on, does the project include making all the improvements in that area where the tent and the clubhouse are now? If it's the putting green and it's 75,000, or if it's more, then maybe comes from a different capital. You know, the practice area project potentially could come out of a different budget. I don't know. Wishful thinking, maybe.
Question, demolition of the existing, that's gonna come out of this budget too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be much.
No.
I can take care of it this weekend.
Try to blow over on its own.
Take care of itself.
Kurt, you talked about the stack scheme, where the carts are underneath Would that be feasible also where the existing clubhouse is and not up on the hill? Is that or if we go
I
where,
think the stack is more feasible in this, in the, kind of the tent location, because it's low, and the arrival can happen right, sort of right where the deck is behind the behind the clubhouse now, could be the arrival into the upper level of the clubhouse, and then underneath, from right and left here, we could have carts coming in both sides. Or we could turn this building 90 degrees, which would make it a little bit more efficient.
I understand. Because one point of one building is we have one roof to maintain, we have, it's one building to maintain,
Right.
per se, rather than two.
Yeah, pouring one
Especially if
foundation,
we got 4,500 square feet and 5,000 square feet.
bringing utilities to two different spots, foundations, like. so-
Yeah, and that's kind of where our estimator would start, and be like, okay, this type of foundation over here, this type of foundation here. Maybe it's actually similar amount of concrete for the building that has retaining wall on three sides. But we could look at a scheme that sort of is the stacked building in the center over the tent. And then we could look at the dual building scheme where the building is on the putting green and the carts are over there. If Tim Garrish and I can figure out the practice area and the putting green can all fit. And that's an important part of the layout that Tim and I will be working on next week.
Because I was thinking when we were discussing that the stack scheme was only feasible for up on the putting green, because it's up so high.
It is feasible, there's just a lot more excavation. So, and maybe the soil can come out and create a flatter area from the parking lot arrival and cart drop-off area to the front door over here. So maybe the surplus soils come out here, and you've got lots and lots of acres that you could potentially waste some extra sand and gravel. But, and presumably, they might recycle and disassemble this practice green while they're rebuilding the other one, and that could happen prior to the contractor's arrival.
Steve mentioned that in some instances, operations will pallet, they'll cut the salt,
Yeah.
pallet the putting green, and then reuse it when they lay down the new one.
Yeah.
So that could be a cost saver if it happens, if the timing is right, Because I'm sure it doesn't
Yeah.
last forever.
And if with the construction season were to kind of go off when it's most favorable to golf, like in October or November 1st, maybe at the middle of October, you cut that practice green out, or even in September, and you're rebuilding it somewhere else as the contractor arrives to start the foundations. So,
Now, where in this plan, I'm kind of trying to picture the staging area and the cot return area, just to assess efficiencies versus our current operation. Because when you have an outing and outing finishes, 144 cots are dropped off all at once. You can see from the aerial right now, it's kind of messy. So I was curious if there's a way to make it a little bit more efficient when that process does take place in the future. Is that
yeah, because
is there enough space for that?
I think there is. And we can have, these are your carts that are ready to go in the morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are two, or these ones?
Those look like they might be returns.
Yeah. So we can create more of a golf cart loop here where carts could be staged and returned. Or perhaps there's a yard down in here where carts are returned before they're put back in the building.
Because if we don't move up onto the putting green, we could use all that space for the trailer,
Right.
car trailer space.
Right.
I've seen golf courses with much less space have shotgun outings come in. I personally don't think that would be an issue. Like New Bedford Country Club has like no space at all. And like I worked there for 10 years and like we made it work. So there's probably like 5-6 times more space here than what they have, and
The other.
You have to also, I'm sorry, you have to also have the employees or like the kids to hustle and do that. I bet at CCMB, you had
Sure.
5 or 6
Yeah.
kids.
No, it
ready
was
to
more
go.
like two. It was
Yeah.
two at any time, it was probably two. And it, they pile up for a little bit, but you just slowly kind of start breaking them down. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as long as you got the space to just have them park the carts, then you just gotta do your best to kind of break them down, clean them up, and put them back where they need to go. I think the biggest issue that we're talking right now here is is there enough space? I guess that's what I was commenting on. I said, I do think that there's enough space for,
I
to
think
just put in.
if the building moves back there, sort of, we'll have like a road that comes in front of the clubhouse now. We'll have to have something like that that goes deeper into the property as well, because
Right.
Deliveries.
ambulance, fire truck, the delivery truck, full-size semi, is it gonna turn in the parking lot and back up the cart path to get closer to the clubhouse, or are they gonna have to hand truck in?
Because that's currently what they do, they pull up the parking lot back in, and then they wheel it into the trailer, so.
Right.
How many deliveries do you get during the peak time?
Well, I have multiple vendors, probably three different, I have a food, 4.
A week?
Yeah, you get a 1 or 2 food trucks, and then you have multiple alcohol vendors and soft drink vendors.
And right now, you're not selling all that much food. I mean, you're still doing
Yeah.
stuff on the grill, but
Yeah.
Yeah, there'd be a lot more.
there'd be more deliveries probably.
Are they timed? Do they come anytime?
No, they have their set days, and we typically, their delivery days are Thursday and Friday, so I staff it accordingly.
Early?
Yeah, I try to have them come early, but those guys on the road sometimes, it happens.
Is there talk of another pavilion? I know in one of our meetings, we brought up the one over in the library. Is that still on the table, or does the building manage that?
Yeah, that was a concept that was passed around, kind of building, like, I won't call it a gazebo, but, we received things like this handout. Kurt, this was one of the, something, it's open to the air, but something that would flow, people were in there, the 144 group, and that was a concept, something that flows out of the building.
Yeah.
When you have the, like Southern's Marsh, they got a space that they, for 80 to 100 people, and then it flows out onto the deck. That's covered.
I think our concern is, is we have a limited budget, that's obvious. We have enough space, we don't want to overbuild the project. But the philosophy I'm trying to put out there is, we didn't create the game, and you do have events that have 144 players with volunteers. So when you have one that is that large, or you have multiple ones that are that large, which we do, that 144th player or those 10 volunteers are just as important as player 1. So if you have somebody coming in, they hit the chow line, they got their food, that's the first player, they're comfortable. But if it's a bad, if the weather's bad that day, and we don't have enough covered space for people, that last person that comes in, they should be just as important as that first person. So when they get their food, they should be forced to sit under an umbrella at a bistro table outside of in the weather. So I mean, that's my only concern. But I'm in no way, shape, or form saying, overbuild it, build it so it's 200 capacity. I'm just stating that we need covered space for the bodies that we currently service. You know what I mean? And I think maybe some of these events that are 100 become 144 when you give them the services that they're probably looking for, right? People that didn't play in an event and we're shutting it down and backfilling it with regular tea times to make the course full at 144, maybe once you have a facility that they can sit down and dine, their loyalty of their customer base grows, and they become 144 player shotguns. And then, you're going to
In a covered pavilion,
business.
or, even open air barn.
Yes, that's my point.
You could Because you could have a dining room for 75 and the open pavilion for 75, get you to 150 people seated for dinner. It's an in and or an out. The only difference would be sort of air conditioning. Right? But even in the open air, we've done windscreens, we've done vinyl.
You can work with it.
Yeah, and you can do radiant heat, which extends your season. And those are all things that can be added to the pavilion over time to really make that.
Right, I just want to try to prevent us from being short-sighted in the sense that, you know, and I understand, the budgets are tight and we can only get so much for what we've got. That's totally
The other thing that's
understandable.
nice about a pavilion and a dining room is that a smaller group could rent the pavilion. And then the clubhouse could still be open for the golfers and, you know, people in town that are just coming through to play 9 or 18 at the end of the day. They've got the clubhouse that they can go to and get a drink and get a burger.
Sure.
Or dinner after they play while an event is happening.
Adam?
If I missed this, my apologies, the 5,000 square foot that you're talking about, what are we looking at to hold just indoors for that, for people?
144,
Is that what it is? That's the
a
number?
building that big. I mean, look at Southern Marsh, it's smaller, and they squeeze in 100. And then, where is this pavilion going? How far do they have to walk from the dining room area?
These are all concepts.
Yeah,
I mean,
the pavilion either could be connected, and it's basically an extension of the dining room with, you know, wall on one side instead of 4.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think is the most practical way to do it,
I
is to
think
have it
that's key.
attached.
We don't want to relocate and walk 50 feet to
Yeah.
another building, trying to,
Right.
It does up on the putting green afford us the room to have the building and the pavilion.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
you
if you go in and you have pro shop, bathrooms, a hallway, kitchen, bar, and then this big dining room, and then sliders or, you know, folding doors or sliding doors that could be opened at an event time, but they could also be different.
are you familiar with Southern Marsh?
I have been there, it's been probably, maybe before COVID, it's probably been 8 years.
Okay. So I
Since
know
played
a
and
lot of us
visited.
had, a few of us had visited Southern Marsh,
Yeah.
I've never been there till the other day.
Now I'm gonna go back and take pictures on a nice sunny day.
And even Dana agrees that a building like that kind of works. You know, from the bathrooms to the hallway, to the pro shop, and you can take a building like that, tweak it a little bit, and it's not 5,000, it's probably only, the
Yeah,
square footage is
yeah.
small. We could blow it up a little bit, especially that dining room, accommodate your 100-plus people, because I think that's key. I think that's so important. What's the number you want as far as golfers and their guests and
Right.
employees to fit in this dining room? And that's no problem opening up those sliding doors to a covered porch where they don't have to
Right.
relocate.
Right.
It's just as cozy out there as it is inside. And that way we can go from that type of a room and have, whether it be 120 people. I mean, there should be a number, you know, 80 is way too small. And it's, you know, 144 people, plus their workers and his workers.
The 80 he's talking about is golf carts.
No, 80 people, 100 people, 144.
I was wondering, how do you accommodate 150 on those peak days?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and is it 2 rooms or 1 room? Or it could be a dining room in the center, and it could be a covered porch on 3 sides. But then all of a sudden, the room feels like 1 room if you open the doors.
Right. Like,
Kurt, let me ask you, the pricing here, just doing the square footage and everything, this is for the building. This doesn't include deck, covered porch, anything like that. This is strictly the building, square footage of the building.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, I did 5,000, 45 at $6 instead of, 571, that's 2.7 for 45, 4,500.
Yeah.
So 2.7 is already getting close to what we have. That doesn't even include deck, covered porch, anything like that.
Yeah, and it doesn't include.
And that's at 4,500.
It doesn't include rebuilding the practice green somewhere
Practice
else.
green, that's right. So 4,500, that, would almost be too much over budget if we're gonna stay within that 2.8.
Right, because I think what we want to do is design clubhouse building that's sort of scalable. We know what the kitchens and bath would be for 80 to 100 people. So if it's going to be, no, they have to serve the bigger unit, the bigger. So the bathrooms and the kitchen and the bar will serve 150, that kind of max occupancy. In the dining room, we can choose how much of it is enclosed, heated, air-conditioned space, and how much of it is pavilion or wraparound porch, which is much less finished, and probably open air, that gets you the space you need, the covered space you need without the finished building expense.
Even at 4,000, at $5.71, which you have, that's 2.3 for the main structure. Now, a deck and a covered roof, you might spend another 300 maybe. I mean, I'm guessing that's do the math, but.
Right, you haven't built the car park yet.
Yeah, well, this is putting them underneath that 4,000 though.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, and I would say that it's the same square foot number for the cart barn, even if it's under, because the cart barn in the basement is probably the same as the cart barn as a pole building. It's not the 500 or 600 a foot. That's the finished upstairs space.
Right.
You know, so, and maybe what we could do is, working with our estimator that I worked on in the last couple, it's been a couple of years, but if we take some of those numbers, times them by some square foot, and do a couple of scenarios just around kind of cost predictions, that would help.
I think so.
Okay.
Because, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, please.
I was looking at the 571 square foot number, and I'm wondering what it is at 600 or 700, and what it is at 300. And what will those finishes look like? Because personally, I don't think we have to worry at Acushnet River Valley that we need $700 a square foot
No.
construction.
No.
I don't think that's our MO, right?
You know, building this building today is a $700 square foot building. Sure. But that's not what you're looking for or even wanting.
So where's the 571 come from? Is it just
That's sort of all in with the site work, the utility upgrades, building a 3,500 to 4,000 square foot building. I think it'll be, you know, and what I did was I just took the 2.8, I took 800,000 out for a separate car market, took 2 million. So how far does that go?
Sure.
Yeah, you know,
That's what I figured.
it's 3,500, 2 million divided by 31, 3,500 is the 571. So if we stretch to 4,000 feet, then our budget goes down to probably less than 500 a foot.
Right.
And in the public realm, things always cost more, depends on who you ask. Is it 10% more or 15% more? It's somewhere in there. Than it would be if you're building in the private sector. It's just the way things keep done.
I think a question we're gonna have to answer, which I don't think we've come to yet, is how big of the food and beverage do we want? I understand that we want to have the capacity to do 144 people somehow inside and flow it out. But what about the rest of the times? What about the times like today? Are we going to have a facility that's got 100 seats and 8 people there, or something to that effect? Are we thinking of bringing this out to the public? Are we thinking of keeping this just to the golfers? And then we have to adjust accordingly with our budget. You know, if we need to reduce.
Yeah. And you know, another question we were going to ask is relating to the food service is the bar service. Is the bar kind of walk-up bar service open to the dining room and people take their drinks and go? Or is there truly desire to build a bar with TVs and stools that people could hang out at and dine at, that takes up space in that dining room, or it could be a separate room, but oftentimes we see the bars open to the dining room and it's got a walk-up service.
And that's what Southern Marshes, they have some
Yeah.
stools, we were just talking about it before the meeting. They have some stools, you can eat there, you can have a beer there, but they don't have people serving them, you know what I mean? Like they go up and get their own beer.
Yeah.
And I think most golfers are okay with that.
I'm just speaking from my perception of what I've gotten from, the people I've spoken with, that selectmen, golf committee members. I think we're looking to just service our customer base. I don't don't think we're looking to get into the McDonald's business, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you're just looking to adequately service your outings that you have and your daily customers. Granted, we'll be open to the public, but I don't envision us being the next Pop Casey in town, you know what I mean? But I don't know, it's not my business, I'm just perceiving what I've interpreted from the feedback that I've gotten. So, I mean, we should probably communicate with the selectmen and see what their vision is. But I've always anticipated that this was like a service shop for your current customer base, with obviously the option that if you had some people walk in at lunchtime, want to hit a bucket of balls and get a sandwich, you can do that too. But I don't think we're looking to get into fine dining on the regular.
Okay, I'm sorry, but let me just say, we haven't determined as a group, you know, how we're gonna pitch this. I mean, when John comes back, he's the service and beverage guy, right?
Yeah.
So are we subbing this out to a corporation? Are we,
So, and I have some
you know, is it
input on
gonna
that.
be town employees doing this?
Right.
Is it gonna, you know, how are you gonna make that whole area,
We currently sub out when we have
what do we want?
large outings for the meal selection, and it's, I can say over the last 2 years, it's probably the best idea we've implemented. Coming out of COVID, the massive increase, our specialty was a steak dinner, but with the prices of red meat and beef going through the roof, it was almost unaffordable for an event to come in, pay the greens fee, and then tack on a steak dinner on top of it. They couldn't make any money, so what we ended up doing is subbing out to a local restaurant. When we had a full outing, or 80 or 144 people, we'd show them a menu, they'd pick their selection, I'd call them, make the order. We'd still service the daily needs, so if they want to eat a hamburger, hot dogs, sausages, beers, we service all of that while they're partaking in the round of golf. Afterwards, the vans come up, set up, deliver the meal, pack it up, get back in the van, give us the invoice and leave, and they got a better quality meal, they had more selection, the prices were affordable, and we still capitalized on getting our food and beverage operation during the day, as well as all the alcohol as it transpired at the end of the event.
Would it be beneficial to have Mike come to a meeting and give us his opinion?
Mike?
Rakani?
I mean, you could if you wanted to.
That's who you're referring to, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was very successful, and as far as the customer feedback, it worked, but in my own personal opinion, I don't think the Board of Selectmen are going to want to spend $3.5 million and then take a lease of $10,000 on their food and beverage operation after they spent all that money. I think they want to reap some of the rewards of the hard work that we've, what we've grown to this stage. We've actually had the program in place. We just need the space to execute it. And I think by doing this, I think we should give it a shot ourselves and sub it out like we're doing now under the tent. See how it goes. If it's a fail, well then you punt, and then if that doesn't work, sub it out.
David, can I ask a question if you don't mind? It would help us, I think, to have some things that you guys, for guidance, like absolutes. We need to have this in the building. I need a building for X amount of people, things that you're looking for.
Well, maybe Kurt can help us out. We discussed this last meeting. We do about 5,500 outing rounds. Of that, 24 of those events are 100 plus players. Everything else is 95 or less. And then the rest of the rounds that we do are all transit golfers that come and play the place on the regular. So, I mean, with that kind of breakdown on players, demographics, where do you think the priority should be with regards to a facility with roughly 2,500 rounds of outings that are 100 plus out of, what, 35,000? 6,000 rounds?
Well, the other way I look at it is, you're probably open for decent weather, say 270, 280 days a year.
Right.
And then you have 24 quote-unquote large outings. That's less than 10% of your time
Right.
to spend servicing a large outing. So we certainly want to have a plan that can address it.
Right.
But my own personal belief is we don't need to build a building that accommodates something we're going to use 10% of the time.
Agreed.
On the same token, you don't want to build something so small that you've already
But you
outgrown
can't,
before you.
right,
Right.
but it's down in the middle, but.
Yes,
Yeah.
Well,
Hey, you guys know Allendale's setup? I think they have a pretty respectable setup when it comes to that for outings versus like, because they have the bar set up where you can sit at the bar, maybe there's like, I don't know, 7 or 8 high top tables that you can get food at. That can accommodate, you know, people that are just playing rounds on the other, but they also have that function room on the side that can also accommodate outings or whatever. But it's just kind of like a separate area that like they would use in the event that they have an outing, but you're not always gonna have outings.
right.
So a setup something like that isn't necessarily a bad idea.
I wonder what the square footage is on that. And the other question is, are we looking
that's huge.
to get
You could probably fit around
144
50
people in the building?
I don't think
On
so.
every event you have?
I think Dave spoke to that pretty accurately. I think you want to have enough roofed, covered, decking, or outside mix of indoor and outdoor to accommodate
Mixed, yeah.
the full
Yeah.
gambit of a full shotgun event. But the majority of time, you're going to be serving transit golfers and regular players in a smaller space. That's what I would see. I don't see us, building a New Bedford Country Club for Acushnet River Valley. It just wouldn't make any sense.
No, but if you built a smaller building, the building itself,
Yeah.
and you did the outside area to accommodate, let's say, 50 people, of course, it's gonna be a lot cost efficient to build
Right.
the smaller inside, and you don't have to do a 4,000 square foot building. I mean, 4,000 square foot building would be 80 by 50. I mean, that's a big building.
I do like your concept of keeping it connected with doors, sliding doors, or
Yeah.
barn doors, or glass doors, so that if you're in an event and it
Yeah.
is that big and you open those doors up, they're actually part of that event. If somebody's on a microphone running a raffle or an auction, you can still partake in that
Right.
and
You can-
contribute.
But when you don't have that outing, you can close them off, and it
Right.
doesn't look like this huge open
Yes.
space that you're not using.
Correct.
Monsters like that,
They're sitting in
that's
the
exactly,
auditorium
something
by
monsters, but
themselves.
that's
Right.
exactly what they have.
And I find guys that grab, different groups of people like to sit in different areas. So the more little seating nooks that you give them, and the doors that we close down when we are slow, they'll walk around the deck and go find a corner spot, walk up to the bar, buy their beverages and food, sit there, and someone else will go on the other side, and everybody will find their little comfort zone. So
You
that's what I
mentioned-
see currently in our current.
You mentioned your tournaments where golfers 1 through 5 come in and they sit in a nice spot, and
Yeah.
golfer 140 comes in,
Yeah.
and they're stuck.
Yeah.
Are you content with that golfer of 140 to go out on the patio in a Southern Marsh environment?
Yes. What I don't want to do is have that player 142, 144 and the volunteers sit at a steel table while it's raining out with an umbrella over them. You know what I mean? That wouldn't be fair. I mean, and I don't think, from a business perspective, it's a good look. And you're not going to grow your business.
No, so
If that happens 2 times, that event will be dissatisfied
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
it'll work against you, basically.
So we don't need to build the building inside to accommodate that 120, 130?
I don't think so.
Good, that's good.
That's what I was-
That's good.
And if you did a 3,200 square foot with the outside, I mean, now you're down to 1.8 million. If you did a 3,200 square foot.
You should put that calculator
But
away.
a covered outside. Was
I said you should put that calculator away.
Well, you gotta come within a budget, you just
Oh, I
can't
know.
do a 4,000 square foot building at $571 because it's gonna be way too much.
Right, the men's room and the women's room are gonna be about 500 square feet. Like I said, I think it's a big bite.
Yeah.
The pro shop the current pro shop is probably 20 by 15, so it's 300 square.
Yeah.
Does it need to be 900? It doesn't need to be 3 times as big, it could be
I don't
twice as
think,
big.
no, I think we could actually use, as Mr. Fagan said last week, we could probably utilize that space a little bit more in the pro shop if we had more space to do what we're supposed to do, where it's supposed
Yeah,
to
the
be.
office and everything else.
Because right now, we've got 3 coolers and I'm actually
Yeah.
storage, I'm using part of the pro shop for storage space.
Yeah,
for things,
you
so.
got the little TV
So
at the bottom.
We're gonna start with the dining room, and then add on everything that goes with it. All right, and then come up with a number And to get to 3,500, it's gonna be a challenge, really efficient, very little corridor space.
It
And,
can't be any less than we got now.
right. But
So,
to,
you give me a shoebox and I'd be happy.
but if we could have 34 to 3,600 square feet enclosed, and we had a wraparound porch, which took your capacity to, the 150 on 10 or 15 days a year.
Right.
That's a home run.
John, you had a question?
Could I have a question based on your bullet points here about your instinct saying that a separate cart barn would be cheaper? If you do a pole barn, which is relatively straightforward, what are we looking at a square foot for that?
I kind of say, well, what if the cart barn was 50 by 100?
Yeah.
And 160 a foot? And I just was trying to use a low number and a high number in the range. We're doing a metal space building with contractor bays right now in Yarmouth, and that's around 237 a foot, and there's 11 overhead doors and 11 bathrooms.
Okay.
That's the only thing in the building.
Yeah.
But it's fully heated and plenty of site work, septic, all the other site components are there. So in the public, could it be 250 foot? I don't think it will be. I think it's gonna be more like the 180 to 200 a foot for a pole barn, which basically is just enough water, seasonal water fed from the clubhouse, so that you can wash cars. And there'll be cold water car floor drain there. And then we'll have a good size power service for all the charging. So I think that building is cheaper by itself than it is under the clubhouse.
I agree.
That's my gut feeling, but I'm gonna talk to some contractors and some cost estimators and figure out what is the difference.
Is that something you can provide us with?
Yeah, I wrote down to do some cost predictions for sort of the one building scheme and the two building scheme. And maybe I'll do it the same way with a high and a low range, to say it could be somewhere in here.
The other question I have, if you don't put storage underneath the building, what are the things that we don't have to put in now?
Well, if the buildings are separate, they'll both be less than 7,500, which means they won't be sprinkled. So we'll have, I'm sure the fire department will want a hydrant right next to the building, but we won't be required by code to do sprinkler in either space. If they're stacked, you need a fire rated 2-hour assembly, which can be gypsum wallboard, a couple layers.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a concrete floor. So it can, but it's just one of those things that I think the two slabs are cheaper than the slab on the floor and fire protection. So I think the two building scheme, even though it has two roofs, should be a little less.
Okay.
That's my gut. But we're gonna try to prove that out with a couple of different scenarios and some evidence from other people.
Because my thought is, we have the room out there, so I think that what you're saying, if we do a separate building, it's not gonna affect an overall room. It's not like we have a tight site to begin with.
Right.
Where you have that flexibility, but then
And maybe the cart barn kind of goes a little further away from the practice area, so that you still have room to build a chipping area there alongside the driving range.
Okay.
We don't want to site a building that prohibits something that you really, really desire.
And that would just make like the logistics for deliveries and stuff going to the building. You're not like, oh, you gotta drive the carts around these deliveries coming in and,
Yeah, because this building can,
Because it does get jammed up when we have trucks come, and it's like that where all those cots are is where the trucks are trying to get into, so.
yeah,
Just remember, you won't have the double wide there anymore either.
yeah.
right. So if that moved in a little bit, we can still create the arrival, relocate this arrival point closer to the building.
Yep.
And we still have room out here to put in some chipping areas and the practice green, all within that area.
Kurt, back to the space building, can you price it out where there's some semblance of heat in there as well? Because the batteries in the golf carts don't like the cold. if we go charge, if we go electric.
Yes, so we can get
It doesn't have to be 70 in there, but it can
no,
be 50.
we could design a building with, it's not habitable, but it's we can put in enough insulation, and typically when they're insulated, it's a plastic scrim over it on the inside, and it's perfect for, we roll out a little ventilation too.
I'm just thinking, because I know that at my course, they have to unplug the batteries at the end of the year, and then sometimes in the spring when they wake them up, a lot of them have to be replaced because they froze. This winter was a bad winter, it got cold. And I have a steel building at work where we actually put electric heat in, and we keep it at like 45 during the season.
And just a thought, like we were saying about like the pavilion space, you know, we've done jobs where we've used the same roof line and used the almost pavilion space incorporated into the same truss roofs, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And use that as the covered, and you're kind of connecting the building and you have that space.
And if the roof structure is the same,
Yeah,
and, you know, at the end of the room, we just have doors that open.
you're not
Someday down the
paying
future,
that much
if you-
more for trusses,
if you said, hey,
LVL, you
10
know?
years from now, we've got a little extra
Right.
juice in the bank
Cover
account,
the
and you want to
outside.
close that space,
Yeah.
you could, yeah.
That's like Sutter's Match?
Jeff?
That
I would
would
show
show
it on
how
you.
you.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah,
Did.
I say we take Sutter's Marsh and we tweak it and make it work.
yeah.
Get rid of the fireplace, put a deck out there.
More deck.
That pro shop is way too small.
Their deck's only
Office-
partially covered, so I would say we would want it fully covered.
Well, the portion of Sutter's Marsh is large, similar to one that Dave just showed me a picture of, another course. And then you could have an open area where it's not covered, whether you do have a table with an umbrella.
Sure.
Which is also good.
Really peak summer days,
Yeah,
and then,
the more options, the better outdoors, because it doesn't cost you anything, really, right?
we've done a lot of pubs where we pulled the roof back a little bit so that the kitchen can roll out grills and do
Yeah.
barbecue nights and stuff like that too, on the
Yeah.
same surface, but not under a roof.
I know the budget is 3.5, is that including what they have in the kitty now? What they're gonna give us?
Well, I don't know what they're gonna give us.
Who said they give it something?
Well, it's been thrown out there, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it hit that level yet. It's been thrown out to us, but I'm not sure.
Right, we based it off the National Golf Foundation report. I mean, we had to start somewhere.
Right.
So we took that report and we tweaked the numbers that were inside of it. And, you know, we came up with that 3.5 million.
And I think that
I had notes from our last meeting that said 3 to 3.5 plus course savings.
Well, maybe, I don't know if Dave can speak to that, but I thought that 3.5 was including,
David was the one who covered that number.
Right.
David, did the 3.5 include anything that they have in savings now?
So, speaking for my own thoughts on this, because we haven't voted on it, but my thought was, what's currently in our reserve fund balance for the golf course, I think it's being slated for the other infrastructure needs that the course would need, such as repairing the bridges if they needed, the irrigation system, things like that. And then it would be like a, contingency of the contingency, if you needed like the last 100, 200,000, and I'm just throwing that out there, potentially. But I think to start with, I think the plan is what's in the contingency fund is more for the other infrastructure beyond the clubhouse, is what that's being held on to for now.
Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the irrigation at the current rate was estimated somewhere around 1.5 million to do
Yeah,
that.
somewhere between 900,000 and 1.5 million,
Yeah.
depending on how much of that components needed to be done. So that's, within the next 5 years, that's another pretty big expense that needs to be taken on, is the irrigation system. So we want to make sure we have a plan for that as well and not cut ourselves too thin.
Right, okay.
on day one.
So the golf fund, the $2 million reserve, or approximately, whatever it is, no monies would come out of that in these, for this clubhouse? Would there be any, like $500,000 that offsets the $3.5 million?
I thought it was said at one of our meetings that some of that money would.
That was my
We
understanding.
discussed it as a
Something like
concept,
that.
possibly, but we don't have the authority.
And again, at the end, to get the last couple $100,000 potentially, but I think to start, I think to be on the safe side, to not assume it, only because you can't, you can only have so many hands dipping into that pie at once with the overall needs of the course beyond just the clubhouse.
Well, just to get an understanding, we have to make sure this budget's gonna work.
Right.
They're looking at paying it off in 5 years. So do you think you're gonna have enough money?
No, I think at the last meeting, if you remember correctly,
No, I'm talking about, when we met here February 11th, we had the initial meeting with all 3 groups. The select board expressed paying this off within 3 to 5 years. Now, is that a number that's gonna be achievable? Or is that something we should start thinking about, well, no, it's gonna be more than 5
I
years,
think we should have a meeting with them and get a number.
Before we,
No, because that's a valid question, that's a big number.
right now we're paying, what, 350 on the
Correct.
note?
And I think
So
that,
we're talking about that expiring in a couple of years.
correct.
So are we gonna take the 350 and then throw another 250 on it to give us 600,000? That'll be our yearly, that we can say, all right, well, it's not gonna be 5 years, but it's gonna be 7 years. And work it that way.
I think at the last meeting, Dave reviewed the 3.5 million under the concept of what the current interest rate was, what our current payment was. Once that was expired and paid for, we would feel comfortable paying that same amount on a project moving forward. But I don't believe that that number would cover a 3 to 5 year payback, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Okay. Just go ahead and apply.
So yeah, I think we need maybe a little more communication with the selectmen to see a reassessment of what our number currently is, what we're kind of looking at with the architect, and then maybe what you just said, what's our plan for payment? That would be good.
All right.
I mean, the payoff date is based on the size of the budget and how much revenue that the course takes in and what they can afford to operate. So I think putting a number like 3 to 5 years is premature.
You
Yeah, it would be
don't
tough.
You don't even have a
It would be
50
tough.
to work off of.
I think we gotta get what we think we ideally want within the budget that you guys are thinking is attainable, and then you kind of back into it from there and say, hey, when this is all done, this is what we all stand behind. Yeah, we think 3.5 million is still a good figure. Then you back into it, say, okay, how many years would it take us to realistically and affordably pay back 3.5 million? And at that point in time, let's say, here's the desired product, here's the anticipated cost, and then back into it from there, and then say, is it truly feasible? But I think it's kind of like one of the last steps instead of saying right now. I mean, the golf course has had debt for 28 years. So, and it's been self-sustaining. So, I mean, not to be a little flippant about it, but what's a few more years of debt to get what we want when we've been paying debt for 28 years on it?
Well, I agree on that aspect. And this, as I said, stating what was said back at our initial meeting.
Yeah, I think that's
There was some dialogue that day where square footage and how much capital, it was just whimsically thought, right, rather than sitting down and understanding what our needs were and working with a professional and understanding how that's gonna manifest itself into a budget and then an actual building, and then what about paying it off later? I agree with that.
Yeah, good, I agree. All right, very good.
So, do you need anything from us, Kurt, at this point, like more?
Well, the last 2 meetings have been really helpful, kind of understanding what the building should have. So I think we have what we need to kind of really put pencil to paper and start designing the 1 building scheme and the 2 building scheme. I will start building sort of a spreadsheet, all costs, and construction budget for those two items as well. And Tim Garish was able to secure that topo and geo survey for us. So I don't think we really need a whole lot more. I'm probably gonna pick a day to go to Sellers Marsh, and I will probably, with one of my associates, come out and take a better look at where the utilities come to now, and what's the service for the current clubhouse and where it originates, so that we can think, what are the upgrades for power for one or two buildings really gonna cost? I think that's a number I wanna get my head around, so we'll come up, call Dana, and make an appointment to visit the club. And I have now a really good sense of sort of the right size of the program in the building. Like I said, a couple offices and the bathrooms are easy to plan. Pro shop at 200 square feet is not big enough, but 400 would probably be really, really nice. And then the kitchen with some walk-ins and area for drop-offs and stuff could be somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 600 square feet. We're gonna try to make that real tight.
If we could, when that phase takes place, I'd like to have John Adbury take a peek at it. And I mean, with what you drop, I'd like to have John's opinion on that, because that's definitely his forte, so we can kind of
The kitchen stuff.
guide us through the kitchen, absolutely.
Okay. So I think we have what we need to really kind of start putting some floor plans together and then locating that. And then I'll work with Tim on sort of which side is the kitchen and the baths on, where's the best views. I think the views are sort of southwest to 18 and, no.
Yeah, 18 and 1 down
Yeah,
the tree
one is on
line.
the left, then 18, right? Yeah. So I think that's sort of where the focus is. The pro shop would look out on that. And then the bathrooms might be right behind that, in between that and the dining room. And then on the other side is all the food service. And the kitchen and the bar and the deliveries are all coming in on that right side of the building. That's kind of where we'll start. That'll get us a conceptual plan that we can at least put a budget on. And then Tim Garish and I will do a little site plan for each concept with the cart staging areas and the cart path changes, and I think he can doodle in the practice area and the new practice green location, so that really is a flushed out concept. We know it worked.
I think as you move into it, you guys found a good idea. I don't think you don't have to put the pro shop view on the scenic side. I think that's where the customer should kind of spend their leisure time.
Yeah, like a pavilion opening up down the fairway.
Okay.
That should have the best view.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
That's, for us, that's selling the product while we're not doing anything, right? They're gonna sit there, look at it, get the ambiance, and I would say the best view, nobody really sees, that's when the sun sets, but once we build the place, people might be having cocktails as the sun sets, and it's right down 18, and it's spectacular, so I think that would be a wise decision. Recommendation anyways, so. If you can draw it up that way, it doesn't work.
It'll definitely work.
Okay.
You can make it work.
Yeah.
Chris, I have a question about the timeline on this thing, because, like anything else, we've been making it up as we're going along. So, today's April 1st, what kind of,
I think I'd like to come back with the kind of program statement and areas that I think the building, each room in the building should be, and the budget outlines. Yeah, and maybe that's in 2 weeks, and maybe that we have the draft of the 2 site plans, and you can pick at those. But then we'll know that we're going on the right path on the building size.
good,
Yeah.
good.
And then maybe I think we could probably think about meeting every 2 weeks until we just kind of nailed it. Over the next, 6 to 8. I think that's the kind of schedule we're thinking about now.
6 to 8
Weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 3
All
or
right.
4 meetings where we got kind of 2 concepts and 2 budgets.
Yeah,
And then we kind of just gonna go, okay, which
excellent.
one do we like and which budget do we like better? Which one is feasible, which one is affordable?
If you go with the 2-building scheme, is there a basement in the single building, the
I don't
clubhouse?
think there would be.
There would be.
No,
Oh, there would not be.
no, probably not.
So then you have a mechanical room.
Yeah, or all the air handlers probably would be in sort of attic space.
Okay.
It'd be a slab on grade, just to kind of go simple, and,
Boilers? Are you
yeah,
referring-
I'm sorry, yes, we would have to have a mechanical room for hot water and so forth, yes. Somewhere in the floor plan we'll have some mechanical space, but
Yeah.
we'll have that all upstairs.
Yeah, back to back with the kitchen or something like that.
Yeah, the kitchen's gonna need hot water, the bathrooms are gonna need plenty of hot water. The
Do you
mechanical
foresee,
systems, most of it will be air handlers.
Built-in freezer slash coolers.
Yeah, we would do probably a walk-in with a freezer section, or they could do 2 side by side. You know, if you have thoughts about the size of those, we've done them 100 square feet each, but we've also done them where they're more like 60 square feet each.
Yeah.
You know,
I'd have
6
to,
by 10s.
There's always ways to do, out of that building later, you could add like a standalone cooler or
Right,
something.
you could have a little fenced area at the delivery driveway where the walk-in could be
that's kind of
external.
what we've been using as a outdoor.
Yeah, it's not as ideal, but if you need the
It's
space.
been working, yeah,
you know.
for now.
It's an option.
Yeah, right.
And on some restaurants, we've done sort of a delivery, you know, overhang, like a little loading dock where somebody can back up the tailgate too. And sometimes on that open air with a covered portico over it is a walk-in. It's not in the building.
Yeah.
And then that refrigeration's not in the building. I like that idea.
Gentlemen, any other comments? So Kurt, would it be okay to say we meet in 2 weeks, or do you want to get back to me?
Yeah, I think-
And that's tax day, the 15th. We could, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I am booked to go to the
Yeah,
the Historic Commission in Barnstable that night.
All right.
But I could do
Can we do
Wednesday or the Thursday.
Can we do Thursday the 17th? Is anybody, is that okay for
Yeah,
everybody?
sure.
Good. All right. 5 PM, right, so let's say our next meeting is Thursday, April 17th, 5 PM, here at the police station. We have our technology sorted out.
Awesome.
Well, Gentlemen?
Make sure we can touch on this, Steve, make sure this is available.
Yeah, I'll verify, you know,
Okay.
that this location is available on Thursdays, not being taken by anybody else. All right, with that, gentlemen, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay, thank you very much.
Awesome.